Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. My name is Chris Incledon. I'm the sales director here at Joseph Mews, and we are being joined today with a friend of the business, Raj, who is a director at Martin & Co., who we work very, very closely with our lettings and management side of the business as well. So um, today we are going to be talking about London versus Birmingham, and the comparing both of the cities in terms of buy to let investment and where you should be investing. The reason why we're doing this is because we do get a lot of clients, new clients that kind of are exploring where to invest, and it seems that London is they're pretty fixated on London as an investment location, which is fine. But it's the reason why they are fixated on it is just because of the name, because it's London, because it's one of the biggest cities in the world, but not necessarily knowing why they want to invest there or why they should invest there. So there are obviously lots of other areas around the UK, regional areas that are great to invest as well, and Birmingham is one of those. So today, this webinar is just kind of comparing the two, just so we can look at them from a facts and figures perspective, I guess. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to talk a little bit about us as a business, and then we're going to go into some comparative slides. Then I'm going to give hand over to Raj, who's going to talk about the rental market in Birmingham, and then we're going to close up the webinar with some Q&As as well. So you can ask the questions throughout the webinar, so please feel free to do that. Please put any questions in the question box, and Raj and I will get to them at the end. So without further ado, let's crack on, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about who we are as a business. So we were founded in 2001 by this man that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, Mr. Andy Foote. Andy is a pretty prolific property investor himself. He started his buy-to-let investment journey very, very young. But one thing he was kind of dissatisfied with when he started this journey was the customer service part of it. He wasn't happy at all with the service that was provided with the agents that he was dealing with. So he wanted to change that. So Andy started a business called Seven Capital Group, focusing on sales and marketing and customer service. Seven Capital are one of the biggest developers in the UK. But Andy headed up the kind of sales and distribution side of the business, where he was leading teams all over the world that were selling Seven Capital's products overseas. We rebranded a few years ago to Joseph Mews Property Group, and the reason why we wanted to do that is because we wanted to work with other developers like Seven Capital. We wanted to give our clients a little bit more variety in terms of the investments, the developments that we were working on, and from a location perspective, from a price point perspective, and that's worked really well for us as a business, and we've been able to kind of build on some long-lasting relationships and work with some incredible partners over in the UK, and we're continuing to do that as well, which is very exciting. Next slide, please. So just to look at our performance in a bit more detail, obviously when you're investing overseas, whether it's your first time or your 10th time, it can always be a bit of a daunting process, and you want to make sure that you're buying the right investment for yourself. So, understanding our track record and our performance over the years is very, very important, and these are our performance in numbers. So we've sold and marketed over 4,200 units. We've been involved in 43 different developments, and we have helped deliver over 630 million pounds worth of gross development value to our clients, and we have got 28% clients repeat purchase with us, which again is testament to us as a business. I believe, what we're trying to achieve with our clients here is building on portfolios. It's not necessarily just buying one property over their lifetime. They want to build for the future and build generational wealth, and relying on these repeat clients is a mega part of our business, and we're happy to say that we've got a high percentage of that here at Joseph Mews. Next slide, please. So just moving, like carrying on from that previous slide, obviously there's us, and you need to trust us as a business and our track record. But obviously, you need to understand who we deal with it as well, our partners and developers on the ground in the UK. And again, it's a massive part of this process. So not a lot of these names here will mean much to you. That a lot of them are developers. Developers don't shout about themselves in the same way in the UK. But there's some incredible developers that we worked with over the years. But you will probably notice the two at the top, JLL and Knight Frank. Knight Frank, we actually have an exclusive relationship that we are their overseas partner for the whole of the Midlands, all of their developments in the Midlands. And it's a relationship that we built on over the past 10 years. And it's testament to us as a business, really, that we're building these types of relationships with these partners and consultants over on the ground in the UK that allow us to be able to do our job as effectively as possible. So that should give you a little bit of comfort about the companies that we work with over on the ground in the UK. Next slide, please. So just talk about the customer service or the customer journey. It's a really important part of our business, and it's kind of what the business was started on, and it goes back to what I was talking about, Andy. This is the reason why I started the business in the first place, is to give our clients, give our investors, that journey that they're going to enjoy, and making sure that we're kind of providing that hand-holding service the whole way through the customer journey. So from the initial conversation to finding you the right investment, to reserving the apartment, to introducing you to the right people along the way, whether that's a mortgage broker, we work with a panel of lawyers on every development that we work on. So we'd introduce you to them, that would take you through the legal process. We've got a customer care team that will be in constant communication with you throughout this process, so you don't feel alone on it. And then, when we get to the kind of tail end of the process, when you actually complete on your property, that's when we would furnish your apartments for you, ready for a tenant to move in. And then we would introduce you to someone like Raj, who will manage and let the property for you. A lot of those, we have a lot of questions around, well, how do I rent my property? We introduce you to the right people in the locations that we work in. We've built up relationships in all the regions and all the areas that we have our developments, and we put you in touch with the right lettings and management agent to deal with your property. So how that would work is that they would take the key off the developer on completion. They would find you a tenant, and they would manage the property for you as well. So they do it all. It's a very hands-off process. You're overseas and don't have to worry about it at all. And they are managing it all for you as well. So if there's any issues with the tenant or the property, you're not involved with it. They are looking after it all for you. So as I said, it's a hands-off process. And us, Joseph Mews, are with you every step of the way as well. Not just when you actually complete. It's not we don't say goodbye and good luck. We are with you 5-10 years down the line as well. As I said before, we rely on repeat business. So we want to help people build their portfolios in the UK, and we are with you every step of the journey as well. Next slide, please. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, guys, if you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and we will get to them at the end. So this is what this webinar is about. We're going to be discussing Birmingham versus London. As I mentioned before, London obviously is a city that everyone knows worldwide, and a lot of people invest in there because they think it's the safest place to invest. But not a lot of people know about the advantages of looking elsewhere and looking in the regions. And Birmingham is actually the UK's second city. It's one of the most centrally located cities in the UK. At the moment, there's a huge amount going on there. Huge amounts of regeneration. The city is changing massively for the better, and this is where we can see the opportunity, and this is what we want to try and do with this webinar is just open people's eyes to the opportunity that is elsewhere around the UK and not necessarily just in London. Next slide, please. So which city would you currently choose to invest in? This is a poll question. If everyone could answer this, just to out of London and Birmingham, just be good for us to know where you would based on your knowledge at the moment, where you would be looking to invest. Okay, so we've got quite an even split here. We've got a couple of people saying not sure. We've got a 50-50 split between London and Birmingham, which is good. So let's go through the next slides and talk about the differences between both of the cities and the things that we should really be looking out on when we're looking at investing in either city. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So London versus Birmingham, this is the rounds that I was talking about. So round one would be, where will your property be worth more in 5 years? Where does your money work harder every month? Which city is easier to afford for overseas investors? And which city is investing more into its future? And what type of investor wins in each city? Okay, so these are the rounds that we're going to look at. We're going to go through them and see how both cities compare. So round one, where will your property be worth more in 5 years? So here, this slide is all about return on investment, and that's exactly what you want from an investment, right? You don't want to invest in a property, in an asset, and over time it's sat there, not really, it's giving you a bit of income every month, but it's not actually giving you the return on investment that you really want. I mean, everything that we deal with at Joseph Mews, it's all focused on that return on investment, the capital appreciation. What is your property going to be worth in 5 or 10 years' time? And that's what we focus on the most. So when we're looking at a 5-year forecast, you can see here quite clearly that Birmingham is going to get the highest return over that 5-year period. There's more room, there's more potential for growth. London has seen a huge amount of growth over the years, but the time has passed, in my opinion. 10 years ago, if you invested in London, you'd be sat in a very good position right now. Especially 5 years ago when interest rates went down dramatically, there was a lot of buying going on in London, all over the UK, but especially in London, and property prices grew quite dramatically. But now, London's kind of hit a peak. I don't really think that it can keep going up and up and up the way that it has been. It's already becoming unaffordable. I'd say it is already unaffordable. So, this is making it difficult for people to actually live in London, to buy property. So, what we're seeing here is that the price growth has slowed quite dramatically. And what we're seeing is in the regions, places like Birmingham, growth is going up and up and up quite dramatically. So, in the 5-year forecast, Birmingham is essentially going to double in terms of value than it was to London. And the reason why the growth indicators is because we're actually seeing more people leave London, so the population is going down. Whereas in Birmingham, the population is going up. It's regeneration led. There's a lot of room to grow. There's a low average property price. You look at the average property price in London, it's 514,000. The average in Birmingham is 236,000. So it's half the price, and there's still so much potential. There's still so much going on. So this is obviously an important part of understanding why both of these cities and the benefits of both of them. Obviously, look, in London, it's a much bigger place. There are still places to do well from your investments. But as a whole, as what we see going on in Birmingham, this is where you're going to see the better return on your investment. If we go on to the next slide, please. So round two, where does your money work harder every month? And this is focused more on the yields, on the rental returns. Okay, so in London, because those prices are so high, because you've got that average property price of 540,000, the average rental yields are a lot lower. So we're looking at 3.5%, whereas in Birmingham, we're looking at 6 to 7%, and this is only getting better and better. Raj will tell you when he speaks that there's a huge amount of demand in Birmingham at the moment, and it's because of the lack of supply. There's not a huge amount of new build or good quality housing in Birmingham. That is due to change with all this regeneration that's happening. But there's a huge amount of demand. So we have this problem in the UK, and that's why rentals are always going to do quite well, is because of supply and demand. But in Birmingham, it's we're seeing a lot more demand than we are in London. And when you compare that to the prices that you're paying for the property and the return that you're getting, then the yields are working out to be a lot better. Okay. Also, you look at the other benefits that vacancy rates. They're below 2% in Birmingham. They're between 7.1% and 10.9% in London. Demand per listing, as I've said, 6 to 8 applicants per apartment in London. You've got 15 to 20 in Birmingham. And obviously the time to rent a flat as well, 30 to 40 days, 7 to 14 days in Birmingham, in comparison to London, which again, Raj will speak about that as well. So, and look, when you're looking at the fees associated with owning a property in London as well, the service charge, developers they're a lot higher than they are in Birmingham. So when you actually look into what you're left with every month after all your fees, Birmingham works out to be a lot more profitable, I would say. Okay. Now, if we go on to round 3, which city is easier to afford for overseas investors? Well, obviously we've talked about the average property prices, so this is quite an obvious one. But of course, London is one of the most expensive places, the most expensive place to buy property in the whole of the UK. So Birmingham is half the price, but it's not necessarily just the buying of the property in the UK. You got to look at what type of investor are you actually going to be looking at as well? Which area is more affordable to live? Where are they going to have a better quality of life? And that's where we're seeing in London is that the opportunities aren't quite there, what they used to be. The cost of living has gone through the roof, and the quality of living has dipped quite considerably. So, this is where we're seeing a max exodus from somewhere like London and moving to the regions like Birmingham, because the quality of living there is higher. It's got everything that London has, and that's what people are looking for. They're looking for that quality of living. So, so if we look at the numbers, the facts and figures, we've got the average property price is considerably different. The average deposit price when you're looking at buying a property is a quarter of the price if you're looking at Birmingham. The stamp duty is obviously increased recently. That is a massive cost that you don't get in Birmingham as much as you do in London. As soon as you start going over a 250,000, 300,000 pound threshold, stamp duty gets more and more and more. So that one-off payment is quite considerable. As I've mentioned, service charges in London in comparison to Birmingham are a lot more expensive. Your monthly mortgage repayments are a lot more expensive. And look, monthly cash flow, I speak with a lot of clients that are buying in London, and they often having to top up every month to pay off their mortgage, even with a tenant in their property giving them rent. And that just doesn't really happen in the projects that we work on. Every development that we work on, the cash flow is going to be positive every month. Even if you're getting 75% mortgages, you're maxing out your mortgage, you're still going to be in a positive cash flow position every month. Not massive, anywhere between 100 to 300 pounds, but still you are positive and you're not contributing anything more to that personally to every month to your investment. And look, we only deal with new builds here at Joseph Mews. That's what we do. So, finding a new build under 300k in London, even in zone 3 or 4, is very, very rare. It's difficult to do. With Birmingham, if you're buying something for £300,000, you're buying in one of the best locations and one of the nicest developments in Birmingham. So what you get for your money is a lot more. And then in terms of completion times and We do tend to see less delays in the regions than we do in London. There seems to be more issues actually delivering projects. And that's something that's obviously important when you're buying, especially if you're buying an off-plan property. That's important to take into consideration as well. Next slide, please. So which city is investing more into its future? And again, this is a very important slide. When you're looking at any investment and any location, you need to understand what's happening within the city. Why am I going to get the return on my investment that I want? Where am I going to see this growth? And that's not just down to just developing loads of residential accommodation and building up and trying to increase the population by doing that. That's not how it works. It's what are they doing to improve the infrastructure, improve the actual city. And look, there's always stuff going on in London, always. They're always trying to improve it. There's always new things being delivered that's going to improve the city. But it's limited. London as a city has everything that it needs. Okay, so it's limited to what they keep introducing there. They can improve the transport links and things like that, but in terms of where we're really going to see value increase, it's limited to what it can still deliver. With the regions, with somewhere like Birmingham, you've got the big city plan where they're spending £10 billion on regeneration. They're improving the city. They've been doing it for the last 10 years. They've still got 20 years of regeneration to go. They've now got world-class entertainment venues, retail, shopping, Michelin star restaurants. All of this type of stuff now exists within Birmingham. And that's continuing to happen. You got to look at what jobs are there, what companies are actually moving there. I mean, look, obviously, London, it's got all the jobs that you need, but there's, the impact of Brexit, the impact of COVID, office space is actually becoming less and less. And what we've seen actually is more companies are moving out. So HSBC, one of the biggest banks in the world, for example, is a great example of this. They were based in Canary Wharf in London. They've actually moved their headquarters outside of London and into Birmingham city centre. So they didn't need the space. They didn't need the office space in London, paying all of that rent. So they've now moved to Birmingham city centre, along with the likes of PwC and Goldman Sachs and all of these other financial institutions that are moving there. And this is an introduction of the reason why they've done this is because HS2, the high-speed rail that's going to be connecting Birmingham and London, is a big part of that. So yeah, it's understanding what's happening. The HS2 station development, for example, is a big thing, right? HS2 is for anyone that doesn't know on this webinar, is a high-speed rail that is going to be connecting Birmingham and London within 40-45 minutes. Okay, it's a quick train. And Birmingham is going to become a commutable city. And that's going to be a game changer for Birmingham. It's great for London, but it's a game changer for Birmingham. It's going to be delivered in 2029. And as we get closer to the delivery of HS2, property prices are going to increase dramatically, in Birmingham, as we're going to be connecting the two biggest cities in the UK together within 40 minutes by one train line. So again, it's not always regen. Some cities, some regions, they're focusing more on transport links or jobs or whatever, but it's understanding and what's happening within these cities to really focus on where you're going to get that return on your investment, where you're going to see the most growth. Okay, and London doesn't have that to the same extent as the regions do, and especially somewhere like Birmingham with all of this investment that's going into it, this regen, these new jobs. It's there's no ceiling in terms of where it can go. Next slide, please. So what type of investor wins in each city? So when we're looking at the different types of investors that we deal with and who is focused more on London, who's focused more on Birmingham, as I said at the start, we get a lot of people, new clients that are purely focused on London. It's just because of the name. It's because they feel safe by doing that, but not necessarily knowing the ins and outs of why you should be looking at other locations. So, the investor types in London, they're long-term, prestige-focused investors. Birmingham, they're yield-focused, early growth investors, people that understand and want to be getting in at an early point and watching values grow over time, because there's so much going on there. There's so much potential. The main appeal in London, obviously, it's global reputation. It's a capital city. Birmingham, it's the high rental yields. It's the fast growth. It's a low entry point. I always say, whenever you're looking at an investment, you don't want to put your money into something that's already there. It's already built up. Things have already happened. You want to be investing in the places which don't have that, but have that planned for the future. That's where you're going to see that return. And it's, a lot of people feel a bit nervous by doing that, because if they're buying in an area that's not necessarily well known, or they don't think it's a very nice area or a nice place, then people get put off by it. But places turn into nicer places through regeneration, through money spent on it, and we have the data. We know what's happening there, and that's where obviously using a company like us to understand these locations and what's happening is super important. So you need to put your investor's hat on and really kind of focus on those things that are happening, to really get to really make the most of your investment. So capital growth, obviously, in London, it's very steady. It's been steady for years. Birmingham, it's fast. It's been, property prices are going up quite considerably, very, very quickly in Birmingham. So there's a difference there. Your minimum budget, it's a lot more affordable. We've already gone over that. 150,000 plus, really, even with a mortgage, that's what you need. Birmingham is 75 to 90,000 pounds to afford a very nice property in Birmingham. So the entry level is best suited for experienced and high capital investors. Birmingham, it welcomes first time, mid-range and portfolio builders. Any type of investor Birmingham welcomes. London, it's slightly different. And price to rental yield, we've a high average property price, which means a low rental yield in London. In Birmingham, it's that low average price point, which also gives you that high rental yield that we really, really want. And then, as I said before, investing in London, I think, it's a specific investor, whereas Birmingham invites all types of investors, which is why we're going to see the city do so well over the next 5 or 10 years. Okay. If we go on to the next slide, please. So just to put this in a graph, which we normally use for other areas as well in the UK, but just obviously comparatively for London and Birmingham, realistically where you want to be in this graph is the top left-hand corner with that low property price, that high average rental yield, and that's where Birmingham sits. Whereas obviously in London you've got that low average rental yield and high average property price, which is not really where you want to be going for a buy-to-let investor. Next slide, please. And yeah, so this is just a bit of a news article. Regional property market set to surge across the UK in 2025. This has been happening for the past few years now. It's not slowing down. We know that UK buy-to-let hotspots have shifted. Landlords are moving away from London and they're moving to the regions, all because of the reasons that we've spoken about in these 5 comparisons that we've done. It's that cheaper price point. It's that higher yield. It's that more potential. There's more going on in the regions than there ever has been. More money being invested, and that's why the regions are going to be thriving. Next slide, please. So now I am going to pass you over to Raj, who is going to talk to you about the rental market in Birmingham and also renting your property through him. So Raj, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Raj. I am from Martin & Co in Birmingham. So Martin & Co is a franchise sales and letting agency. So in the UK, there's about 150 Martin & Co offices. and I have two offices in Birmingham, one in the city centre and one in Harborne, which is a suburb of Birmingham, which is literally just 2 miles away from the city centre. But that deals more with like family housing, where the city centre is more the young professional market. We've got hundreds of Joseph Mews clients that we work with and manage their properties, and manage their asset, and get the best out of their asset. Many of these are overseas investors, so we're well placed to service overseas investors and know the needs of overseas investors and adapt to how they want to communicate. So WhatsApp, Zoom, email, telephone call, etc. Could I have the next slide, please? And the next slide. Okay, so talking to you about the Birmingham rental market. So just a snapshot of what we've noticed this year. So average tenancy length has increased to 2.4 years. So renters are staying longer, so you've got a lesser risk of having a void. Although, if I'm being honest, a void isn't really that much of a risk because properties let that quickly that even if you do have a void period, it's tends to only be a week, maybe 2 weeks. But it's a good thing. Obviously, tenants are now staying longer. And I think that's probably down to the fact that moving house or moving flat is a lot of effort in terms of, and financially, there's a lot of financial burden for that. In you've not got just the hassle of finding a place to rent, but also registering for your utilities, council tax, and moving your belongings, paying removal firms, and changing address. So I think just the factors and the hassle of moving is keeping tenants staying longer in their properties. Um, we've had a shift as well in terms of doing pre-lets on new developments. So what that is, basically how we do this is, let's say a new development is being launched and it's due to be delivered in, say, September. What we'd then do is we call it soft marketing. We'll soft market the apartments in the background, drawing up tenant interest, making them aware that these apartments are going to launch to the market in, say, September. And then what we'll do is we'll make a list of tenants that are interested in renting an apartment. We'll also get a list of landlords that have instructed us and said, right, when I complete, I'll be giving you my apartment. I've got a 1 bed, for example, or a 2 bed. And then we'll match tenants up to these properties so that the minute legal completion takes place, we have a tenant lined up. And then we can then take a deposit from a tenant and formally let the property. But yeah, that's how we do it so that we minimize any void period for landlords. There's also a massive increase on tenant inquiries. So literally, when we come into the office each day, we'll come into hundreds of new inquiries that have come in, overnight. So yeah, there's just a massive demand. And over the years, the supply just hasn't been anywhere near good enough. Now, it is good more recently. The developers are starting to catch up a bit, and they are, delivering more apartments, which is good because yeah, there hasn't just been that the supply just hasn't been there, but there's plenty more for the developers still to do, and continue that supply so that we can have a balance of supply and demand. Could I have the next slide, please? So, just some reasons on why overseas landlords are coming to Birmingham. So, according to some Knight Frank and HomeLet data, Birmingham ranks just after London and Manchester for international activity, but it has the highest yield per pound invested. Now, I was a bit surprised at this, to be honest. I thought that I knew obviously London's an obvious one. Obviously, it's the capital, and most people overseas they would know London. But I was surprised that Birmingham came after Manchester, just because Birmingham being the second city and having the better yields. I thought Birmingham might have been coming at least at second spot. But maybe that might be down to the fact that Manchester's probably got a bigger name kind of overseas because of maybe the football teams. So yeah, that might be a reason. Um, Also, we've got HS2, which, as Chris said, is an absolute game changer. Is gonna, what it's gonna do for Birmingham is gonna be amazing. The fact that people can literally commute, live in Birmingham and go to work in London is, and get there within 45 minutes. There's part of London where they would have to travel an hour to get from one part of London to the other. So it's, the fact that property prices in Birmingham are a lot lower than London, I think we're going to see a massive, massive influx of people moving here. We are already seeing that because obviously with the cost of living, a lot of people already are finding that they want to get out of London and go somewhere cheaper, and Birmingham makes sense. Obviously, with it being the second city, but also geographically, it's right in the middle of the country, so you can get to absolutely everywhere with ease. Um, so yeah, the HS2, it's obviously it's not just HS2 on its own, it's everything it's bringing with it. Businesses, labour. Obviously, the amount of people that are having to work on the infrastructure of HS2, it's bringing a lot more jobs. So although HS2 isn't here today, live and running, it's bringing a lot of activity still now in the early days. So once it's delivered, I can't even imagine what it's gonna bring for the city. Could I have the next slide, please? So who's renting in Birmingham? Who are the tenants? So it's mainly young professionals in the city centre. If you go outside of the city centre, it's more families living in the suburbs. But the young professionals, they all want to be in the city centre. They want to be near the bars, the restaurants, the shops, businesses, walk to work, and have that kind of city living social life as well. Um, we've do very, very well from the NHS. So there are a number of hospitals, some of them fairly close to the city centre, but some a bit further away. But the way the NHS works is if you're a junior doctor and you're getting your first job with the NHS in the Midlands, they often you'll get on a contract, it might be a 5-year contract, and they'll put you on a rotation. So what that means is each year you'll be changing hospitals within the Birmingham area. So, year one you might be in North Birmingham, year two you might be in South Birmingham, then East Birmingham. So what that means is a lot of these tenants, they will flood to the city centre knowing that, well, actually, I don't know where I'm going to be the following year and which hospital. So the city centre makes sense. It's right in the middle of everything, and then it means I don't have to keep moving property each time I move to a different hospital. So, that the NHS is a big, big um, supplier of employees, and we work very closely with the NHS, and a lot of our tenants come from the NHS. We've also got links with the universities, and also the graduates, because the retention rate for students staying in Birmingham once they've graduated, I believe is the highest in Europe. I think I've read. But yeah, you'll find if you find in Birmingham that a lot of people aren't from Birmingham, and they've stayed, post uni. But we also do a lot with the international students. A lot of the international students, they don't want to necessarily live in uni halls. They've got a bit more wealth behind them, so they would like to stay in the kind of the luxury apartments. And they can be great tenants. They pay, 12 months up front, and they often stay in the apartment and renew each year, for the duration of their studies, which might be, 3, 4 years. We also do a lot of corporate lets, so working with relocation agents and the big corporate banks, so the likes of PwC, HSBC, etc. And that is on the increase with companies relocating from the likes of London to Birmingham. So that is keeping the market going and making it really buoyant. And it's not something that we deal with ourselves, but short lets is a thing that is becoming quite popular in Birmingham. So that's like serviced accommodation, Airbnb. So that is another option for landlords to look at. And there is an increase in tenants wanting furnished apartments. So, if you were to buy an apartment in Birmingham in the city centre, I would strongly advise you to furnish it because it will make it a lot more easy to let. Um, and yeah, just reconfirming about the tenants staying longer, and I predict that over time that the amount of time that they're staying probably will increase and increase as time goes on. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so what are Birmingham landlords doing differently now? So we are seeing a more of a switch to the fully managed service. I mean, the fully managed service, it's always been popular, but there have been some landlords that have gone for our tenant finder only service, where literally we just find them a tenant and the landlord does the rest. But these days with the increased legislation and landlords are getting busier and they've got their day jobs to do, it makes more sense for them to just hand it to the agent. We do a fully managed service where we will do absolutely everything. So as a landlord, it's completely hassle free. We can update you step by step on what we're doing, but you don't have to be involved. We can you know you can have as little or as much involvement as you want in the process. So as I said before, furnished is a very, very important thing for city centre apartments. Strongly recommend it. 90% of tenant demand is for furnished. So if you do it unfurnished, it will make it difficult to let. And the furnished option is also helping to drive your rent and have that high end rent and increase your yield and attract them the best quality tenants, the corporate relocation tenants. There's a focus on 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. That you do get 3 bedroom apartments as well, but they're just that there's a shortage of supply of them, and there's probably less demand for them as well. So most landlords, they are looking at 1 and 2 beds and prioritizing 1 and 2 bed apartments just because of the demand for them. Um, and yeah, just what landlords are doing differently as well is they're kind of being educated about letting off plan and doing this soft marketing period in the background. So we're finding that landlords are instructing us earlier on in the process. Historically, what they would do is they'd maybe speak to us before completion. They'd have a conversation, and then once completion's taken place, then they would instruct us. But we're finding a lot of landlords wanting to get in early. They want to, decide the furniture pack, instruct the letting agent, so we can just crack on and have a tenant lined up. So when we've got the keys, we can then take a deposit and get the tenant moved in fairly quickly from there. There's also some diversification with landlords. Some are maybe buying in the city centre and then maybe having an apartment in the suburbs. Some landlords are just wanting to buy in the city centre, but then they're picking different pockets of the city centre, maybe Jewellery Quarter, or right in the core of the city centre, or maybe Digbeth. So maybe they're diversifying in that way, or maybe having a 1 bed and then having a 2 bed in a different development. So there's different ways of diversifying your portfolio. Might be location, it might be type of property and how many bedrooms, or different developments. Not just buying a few apartments in one development, and maybe if you were buying 3 apartments, buy it in 3 different ones. Could I have the next slide, please? So the outlook for the Birmingham rental market over the next few years. So HS2 is driving demand and rental demand, even though it's not here at the moment and it's not up and running the station and the train line. It is still driving rental demand because of the people that are relocating, because of jobs that it's creating. There's HS2 is a massive employer. They need a lot of engineers and people working on the infrastructure of delivering the project, and also the businesses that are setting up around in the locality of HS2. So yeah, it's already, we are seeing the effects of it. We're early on in the stage, but it is having a big impact on the rental market here. There's massive regeneration planned around the city centre. There's over 5,000 units due to be delivered, and we need these units to meet up with the tenant demand that is just growing and growing as more people are relocating to the area. Rents are expected to grow by 12 to 15% over the next few years, especially for city centre apartments that are walkable to everywhere and in a great location. Rents massively soared from about 2020, just after COVID and the lockdown restrictions eased. Rents went through the roof from 2020 to about 2024. And then 2024, 2025, they've done quite well. They haven't, soared as they were, but now we're about to go into the next stage of rents, really increasing again. And we probably needed that bit of kind of balancing where rents, just leveled off a bit because it was becoming very unsustainable for tenants. But we are going to go through another level of, big rental growth over the next few years. Um, and that is, great for a landlord, not so good for a tenant, but it's part of, the cost of living, I guess, and inflation and what comes with that. Rental yields are predicted to remain above 6% for the next few years, and that is down to the rental growth that we've had and the rental growth that is predicted for the next few years as well. I remember 10 years ago that you wouldn't get 6% yield in Birmingham because just the rental growth wasn't there. The rents maintained kind of 10 years ago. They never dropped, but they didn't have the growth that we're going through now due to the supply and demand imbalance. So it's good news for landlords that these rental yields that they are experiencing, they are going to continue to experience long term. Build to rent. For those of you that don't know what build to rent is, it's basically large corporate institutions and pension funds that basically build their own development of maybe 300 apartments, and rather than selling the apartments, they keep the whole building to rent out. Now, this is a big part of the city centre market. We're finding a lot of build to rent developments around and being launched, but individual landlords that are buying one or two apartments, they are still dominating the market. And one thing I would say about the build to rent market is that it's a good sign, the fact that these big corporate institutions are wanting to basically build in Birmingham. It shows because these corporate institutions do a lot of groundwork and research on the market, and it takes years of planning and research. If they're wanting to build apartments in Birmingham, there's a reason for that. So it can kind of give you confidence knowing, well, if the likes of John Lewis, for example, are going into the build to rent market, which is a complete different strategy from what their current business is, there must be something to this. If what they wouldn't be doing in it if it wasn't worthwhile and that this wasn't going to be a growth sector. Could I have the next slide, please? So a few questions that we get from some of our overseas landlords. So what happens if the tenant stops paying rent? So this does happen. It is very rare though. So, for maybe I'd probably say 1% of tenancies, if not maybe even less, it can happen. And what I would recommend to every landlord, just for a bit of peace of mind, is you can take out a policy called rent guarantee insurance. And what that means is, in the unlikely event that the tenant doesn't pay the rent, all your rent would be covered essentially by the insurance company, and the insurance company would evict the tenant and pay you the rent whilst that eviction is going through. The cost of it is around about £200 per year, so it's not a massive cost. You're talking less than £20 a month. If you want that peace of mind, it's definitely worthwhile. Some landlords take it, some don't, because the ones that don't, I guess they think, well, look, it doesn't happen very often, so they're willing to take the chance on it. But if you're risk averse and wanting to have pure peace of mind, then it is definitely worth having, especially as an overseas landlord. You don't want the stress if a tenant was to stop paying. But you know, a lot of this is down to the type of property you buy. So if you were to buy a property in a not so good area, you would attract not so good tenants, and you're more likely to get a tenant that stops paying the rent. But if you're buying a new build luxury city centre apartment, you're gonna attract a good tenant. So it's less likely to happen. What's the most common maintenance issue, and how do you handle it? So I'd probably say probably say the most common maintenance I think is maybe kitchen appliances, maybe going faulty. So maybe like the washing machine. Now, how do we handle that? If it's a new build apartment, most of the time you'll get probably a 2 year warranty that covers the white goods, and any issues, basically we will call out the supplier of them white goods of that washing machine and get them to fix it within their warranty period. No cost to the landlord for that. Obviously, after the warranties ran out, then we would essentially get a quote from an appliance engineer to get that fixed. Um, Typical call out charge from an appliance engineer is about £70, and 9 times out of 10 they can fix the issue within that. The good thing about new build apartments, though, is a lot of these new build apartments, they're coming with really high spec brands. So a lot of the appliances, they're the top spec appliances, so it just means the likelihood of them breaking down or having issues is a lot less. So, yeah, probably actually, I was maybe wrong to actually say that there's a common maintenance issue, because it's actually common in probably the older properties where the white goods and the appliances are a lesser known brand. But in your new build apartments, probably less so, because they're more a better brand that lasts longer. Can I switch to short lets later? So short lets Airbnb, it's not something that we do, but there are plenty of Airbnb management companies out there that can provide you with that service. All I would say is just make sure that if you're buying in a development and that's something that you want to do, just check that it is something that is allowed, because in some developments you are allowed to do short lets, in some you aren't. How much should I budget for service charges and management fees? So we have a special discount that we offer to Joseph Mews clients, and that's 9% plus VAT management fee, so around 10%. So if you budget that as your monthly management fee, so deduct that from the rent, and then also service charge. It's a really difficult one to put a budget on, because it really depends on the development and the amount of facilities that development has. So, for example, if it's got a concierge, a gym, and all the swanky facilities, work from home area, your service charge is naturally going to be higher than a development that doesn't have a concierge or doesn't have facilities. But I would say, as a rough estimate, somewhere average service charge might be around £200 a month. But yeah, it's very development specific with that. So I'd always find that out when you're looking to buy a property. Always ask, what the service charge is, so you can calculate that into your figures. How quickly can we get tenants in after completion? So a lot of that is down to the landlord. So if the landlord gives us keys or doesn't instruct us till we basically, they once they've completed on the apartment, so they don't give us any indication that they're going to be going with us prior to completion, then really we need to start the minute it completes. So then you've got a few weeks delay of you've got to get furniture in there and start looking for a tenant. So then it could be a few weeks. Whereas if you get in early, you commit to us beforehand and you say, right, let's rent it, market it for this price and let's go for this furniture package. We can do all the soft marketing in the background. So essentially you can have a tenant, in pretty much very shortly after you completing on the purchase. So definitely recommend, starting the process as early as possible, just being a bit on the ball and being ahead of anyone else that might be buying in the same building. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to pass you back to Chris now, just so he can discuss about investing in Birmingham.
Thanks, Raj. Much appreciated. So yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail about our projects. But if we go on to the next slide, we do have quite a few projects in Birmingham. It's an area of which it's where we're headquartered, it's where our offices are. It's an area where we've done most of our development, so we know it very, very well. We have some incredible opportunities available. Number 30 St Paul's, for example, is one of our latest launches. It's situated on St Paul's Square, which is the last kind of Victorian square in Birmingham. It's a lovely, idyllic location, and it's an incredible development. It's a conversion. It's a boutique 55 unit development. Sorry, and it's something very, very unique to Birmingham, and something pretty special. So that's an example. We've got the Paper Yard in Birmingham, which again it's something it's a brand new development that's being built right next to HS2 station. So with everything that Raj and I have talked about HS2, that's going to be a great investment and prime for kind of capital appreciation. So we've got some great opportunities to talk to you guys about. So if if you want to book in a meeting and for me to kind of talk you through everything that we've discussed today in a bit more detail and also go through some opportunities, then please let us know. Okay. So next slide, please. Just to understand what it takes to be a Joseph Mews client. Realistically, you need to have, if you are looking to invest with us immediately, you need to have access to £50,000. You want to have clear motivation and commitment for wealth building, and you need to adopt that kind of long-term growth strategy that's needed for buy-to-let investment into the UK. Next slide, please. We do have a special offering for you guys on the webinar today. If you do end up investing with us, you get £1,000 towards your legal fees and £2,000 worth of furniture as well, which is a nice little saving for you. The next steps, look, please let us know if you do want us to reach out and book in a meeting. I think we do have a poll here, but one of us here that you see on the screen will be reaching out. So it'd be good for us to know, where you are with your investment journey. Are you ready to invest now? Would you like to speak to a mortgage broker? You want to learn a little bit more about the UK and its market, or you're just exploring for now. So it'd be good for us to know this, and then we can plan accordingly and reach out to the people that are ready to invest now. Just a Q&A. So I am conscious of time. We've gone a bit over time here, but we do have a couple of questions that I will quickly answer. So one of them is income tax on rental income differs accordingly to the city. No, it doesn't. Income tax is the same wherever you buy your property. I think what I mean when we were speaking about the different types of income tax that you have if you're buying in London against Birmingham is that typically you're buying a lot more and you're spending a lot more in London, which means that you do get a higher rental income. Doesn't mean that you have a higher yield, just naturally you have a higher rental income because rental prices are a lot higher, which means that you might fall into a higher tax bracket, which means that you might end up paying more tax. So that's what I mean by that. But essentially, no, you don't. Income tax is not. It doesn't differ from city to city. Can I ask if your company only sells new build apartments? Do you provide services to buy land, property, or rebuild it? No. So we only do new builds. We only do it's off plan and completed property. We don't sell land or sites. It's only pretty much new build apartments that we do sell. Okay, so that we've got a few other questions on here that people are asking to reach out and things like that, which is great. So we will reach out. So but I do want to wrap this webinar up now. I do feel like we've got a little bit too long. But look, if anyone else has got any other questions and we want a meeting, then let us know and we'll reach out and we'll put that in. Okay. So thank you very much to everyone that has joined this webinar today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it educational. Yeah, thank you, Raj, for your time and your input as usual. And yeah, thank you very much.